Sometimes I struggle to be empathetic towards others, and this is not me disclosing to the world that I'm a psychopath or something. Struggling to feel empathetic towards other people is a mix of both the ideologies promoted by the society we live in and being a male person in general. This may feel like a weird mix, but it's totally accurate, and both of them combined actually explain why we find it easier to empathize with animals more than humans sometimes. Let's start with discussing where empathy comes from, and then I'll talk about what's missing in today's world. The first ingredient to empathy is perspective. Having perspective or putting yourself in someone else's shoes, is what they say, is probably the biggest component of feeling empathetic. Because it's not until you see the world from their perspective can you truly begin to understand their side of the story. Okay, that's a given. Perspective is actually a skill, and I'm still trying to get better at it, but the art of perspective, as I like to call it, it's generally fading away. Because here's the thing, learning perspective isn't like a software you can download and then you're good. Because it's a skill, and skills take time to learn and build, gaining perspective also takes time and effort. So you can probably guess where I'm going with this. When you were a little kid and you fell down and started crying, it was easy for people to feel empathetic for you because the perspective was already there. They already knew what it's like to fall down and get hurt. Understanding your perspective and why you're crying didn't require much time and effort. But as you grow up and your experiences become more personal and less universally understood, the population of people that understand your perspective and could potentially empathize with you became smaller and smaller. Basically, the more different you became from the rest of society, the more you alienate yourself from the empathy of other people. Someone who lives a suburban life and goes to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, can get a lot of empathy from other people if they were to complain about their work life balance or something, or even share their joy on getting a promotion. But on the other side, someone who lives on a farm and complains about losing their sheep to wolves isn't going to get the same level of universal empathy. Not enough perspective, that is. It's weird to think about, but it's true. As you're probably aware, being different today is actually endorsed. Without getting into any specific propagandas on gender identity, essentially, being different is somehow a sign of strength and courage, even at the cost of alienating yourself from everyone around you. Gen Z is the loneliest generation and the most socially isolated generation. My take on this is not just that we're on our phones all day and social media has grown us apart more than it has connected us, but because we have the most differences in opinions and experiences within a single generation. This is both a good and a bad thing, but linking back to my point about losing perspective, the more different someone is from you, you've unintentionally created the perspective epidemic from trying to be different from someone else. Try walking out of your house and try to relate to the first 10 people you see your age. Most likely, you find that there are more differences than similarities, and maybe you'll click with 1 out of the 10 people. Now imagine one of those 9 out of the 10 that you did not click with needs a ride home. Yeah, that's what I thought. You ain't letting no stranger in your car. So now that we're here, what does this turn us all into? One thing about empathy is that when you don't receive enough, you also struggle to give it to other people. And so a whole generation low on empathy is a whole generation that is just sour, cold, and distant. Think about it. We have no patience when it comes to dealing with BS. Everyone has a really high ego, or at least knows someone that does. This is not normal. Personally, I only noticed this happening to me when I was starting to date my girlfriend. Mostly because when I'm with her, that's when giving empathy probably matters the most. But also because she checks me when I'm being super cold or distant. Honestly, I was kind of aware of my apathetic tendencies, but I never really started working on it until I started seeing my girlfriend because it never really affected me. It would be something that affected other people close to me, but life just went on. With my girlfriend, however, things are different. I want her to be content in this relationship as much as I am, but she needs my full attention and maximized empathy for her to feel secure. I'm sure other dudes feel generally the same, but this leads to the second ingredient to feeling empathy. This one is not really an ingredient, but empathy doesn't come naturally to guys. I guess this is because we're supposed to rage at everything or something, but it's just not something that's instinctual to us. Without opening a can of worms, it's useful to take a glimpse into our childhood as guys and the way we're brought up. I don't know about you, but I was a proper South Asian and I wasn't introduced to gender roles until I was 10, I think. Now, being introduced to gender roles isn't something that happens purposefully. It's actually very subtle, and most of the time, you don't see it coming. This is one of those moments when you know what's happening and somehow you inherently know what you're supposed to do, but at the same time, it's kind of trippy because you've never felt this sense of responsibility over anything before. For me, this happened when I was like 9ish, and my mom decided to play a prank on all the kids. She was out shopping, and all the kids were home with their grandparents, and she calls over and tells us that the cops are coming. I don't remember the exact details of her crazy prank, but I remember feeling really responsible over everyone. Most of the other kids were girls, and most of them were older than me, but I still felt this underlying responsibility to protect them from the danger. So I went over to the roof so that when these imaginary cops did eventually come to the house, I'd be able to see them with a good view at least. And I stood there watching the corner of the street like a hawk, right? Obviously, the cops never showed up and I got made fun of, but what I felt in that moment was real and I knew it meant something. Coming back to the idea of empathy, I think that story relates to this idea because as guys, we have to give up being empathetic at times to let more useful emotions take charge so we can find a way through. Say your father has cancer. Everyone is already sad, and there are two possible emotions that you can feel yourself. It's either sadness or anger. With sadness, you're left useless because you're feeling sorry for your dad and you're feeling sorry for yourself. At least with anger, you're not feeling sorry, and depending on the severity of the situation, you're motivated to find a way through. Either you carry your family through this hardship because it's terminal, or give him the care you can afford to. That's probably not the best example, but it's kind of extreme. But hopefully, you can get the idea why empathy may not be the go to emotions for most guys. Just to be clear, empathy is not a fault, it's actually a feature. Think of all the different types of jobs that require empathy, like nurses and aged care workers, but then also think about how most of those roles are dominated by women, while roles like butchers and morgue workers are men. It's not correlation, it's causation, and reflects the tendency for men and women to feel empathy. Here's the thing, right? Empathy is not just feeling sad or happy about someone or something, it's also the root emotion you need to listen to someone or something. This is why content creators create relatable content because everyone watching just wants to imagine themselves in the video. Memes about who gets the last slice of pizza or locking in when the barber is at the hairline, right? These types of content work so well because people watching imagine themselves in those moments. That is a state of empathy. Instead of pulling yourself in someone else's, Instead of putting yourself in someone else's shoes, you're just watching someone else in your shoes. Think about that for a second. When you lack empathy for yourself, you stop listening to yourself. This leads to a whole generation being blindsided by ideas and motivations that are not theirs to begin with. This effect is so apparent in guys that are walking the streets nowadays. Never has a generation of men, quote unquote, getting after it this hard and also being so unsure of themselves at the same time. I'm speaking to this because I went through it. You don't stop to think what you really think about something. Instead, you just believe what everyone else is thinking. You start dirty bulking, drop shipping, looks maxing, right? All at the same time. The result of which is living a life that was never yours. The increased spanning of differences between each person within a generation and the gender affiliated lack of empathy in men is probably one of the greatest reasonings that my mind has uncovered. If you're in the middle of this Venn diagram, meaning you're both a guy and you live in the Western world, you almost have to fight the outside world to feel empathy. To feel empathy towards others and towards yourself. And having seen the other side of it, I can confidently say that it's a battle worth fighting.